I'm 63 years old and my name is Geraldine. For 30 years, I've been a devoted single mother, building my career as a financial consultant while raising my daughter, Stephanie. I sacrificed everything to give her the best life possible. When she found her dream house, I planned to use my retirement savings to help with the down payment as her birthday gift. Then came those crushing words. The greatest gift would be if you just died. If you're watching this from a place where family betrayal touched your life, hit that like button and subscribe as I share how those 8 words changed everything. My journey as a single mother began when my husband David died unexpectedly from a heart attack when Stephanie was just 3 years old. The shock of becoming a widow at 33 left me reeling, but I had a toddler who needed me. There was no time to fully process my grief. In those early years, I worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat. Days as an entry-level financial assistant, evenings waiting tables, and weekends doing bookkeeping for small businesses. Sleep was a luxury I rarely afforded myself, but Stephanie never went without the things she needed. "Mommy, when will you be home?" Stephanie would ask each morning as I dropped her at daycare, her little hands clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit eyes, wide with uncertainty. "Before the big hand reaches the 8, sweetie," I would say, pointing to the clock on the wall. "And then it will be just you and me all evening." Those evenings were precious. Despite my exhaustion, we created rituals that bonded us. Bath time adventures with her toy boats, bedtime stories, where we took turns making up the endings, and Sunday pancake breakfasts where she could choose any toppings she wanted. As Stephanie grew, so did my career. By the time she entered middle school, I had secured a stable position at a respected financial firm and earned my certification as a financial consultant. The extra income meant Stephanie could take dance classes and join the swim team. She blossomed with these opportunities, bringing home ribbons and certificates that covered our refrigerator. Mom Katie's mom is taking them to Disney World for spring break. 10-year-old Stephanie mentioned one evening during dinner. "That sounds fun," I replied, mentally calculating our budget. "She said I could come if you pay for my ticket." That trip stretched my credit card to its limit, but the joy on Stephanie's face as she hugged Snow White made it worthwhile. This became our pattern. I rarely said no to experiences that would enrich her childhood, even when it meant postponing my own dreams. Dating wasn't a priority for me. The few men I went out with seemed to lose interest when they realized Stephanie would always come first. One promising relationship ended when Frank, an accountant I'd been seeing for 6 months, suggested Stephanie was a bit spoiled. "She's not spoiled," I defended. "She's loved." But looking back, perhaps there was truth in his observation that I couldn't see. Stephanie excelled academically throughout high school. When her acceptance letter from Princeton arrived, I cried tears of pride. My daughter would have opportunities I never did. The financial strain of an Ivy League education was significant, even with scholarships, but I took out a second mortgage without hesitation. It was during her sophomore year at college that I noticed the first real change in Stephanie. Her calls became less frequent, and when we did speak, she seemed irritated by my questions. "Mom, no one calls their parents every week in college. It's weird." When she came home for Christmas break, she brought shopping bags from luxury stores I could never afford. "These brands are what everyone wears," she explained when I expressed surprise at her $300 jeans. My roommate says presentation matters if you want to make the right connections." I reminded her gently about budgeting, but she rolled her eyes. "You just don't understand how things work in my world now." Her world. The distinction stung. During her junior year, Stephanie decided to study abroad in Paris. The program costs weren't covered by her regular tuition, so I dipped into my retirement savings for the first time. When she called to thank me, her excitement warmed my heart. "This is going to open so many doors for me, Mom. All the best people in fashion and finance spend time in Paris." 3 months into her Paris experience, Stephanie met Jackson. From a wealthy East Coast family, he was completing his MBA at INSEAD. Their relationship progressed quickly. When they returned to the States, Jackson took a position at a prestigious investment firm in New York, and Stephanie transferred to NYU to be close to him. I was apprehensive about the speed of their relationship but tried to be supportive. When Stephanie brought Jackson home to meet me, I prepared an elaborate dinner, cleaning my modest 3-bedroom house meticulously. "Your mom's place is but to say quaint," I overheard Jackson say to Stephanie in the kitchen. Very middle America. Stephanie's reply cut deeper. I know, it's embarrassing. But she did her best, I guess. They married shortly after Stephanie's graduation. The wedding was at Jackson's family estate in the Hamptons. I felt out of place among their wealthy friends, but smiled through it all, contributing what I could to the cost despite Stephanie's parents insisting they would cover everything. We don't need your money, Geraldine, Jackson's mother said with a thin smile. But perhaps you could handle the rehearsal dinner at that little Italian place you mentioned. That little Italian place cost me 3 months' salary. After the wedding, Stephanie and Jackson settled into a luxury apartment in Manhattan. Their lifestyle was lavish, exotic vacations, exclusive clubs, designer, everything. Each time I visited, Stephanie seemed more distant, more critical of my clothes, my hair, my opinions. Mom, you might want to invest in some better skincare. There are these amazing treatments that could really help with your aging issues. Or, why don't you upgrade your car? That Toyota screams, I've given up on life. Each comment chipped away at my confidence, but I smiled through it, telling myself she just wanted the best for me. In reality, I think she wanted a mother who better fit into her new social circle. When I turned 60, I began seriously planning for retirement. After decades of hard work and careful saving, despite the withdrawals for Stephanie's education and other needs, I had accumulated a respectable nest egg. My financial planning practice had been successful, and I had followed the same prudent advice I gave my clients. My dream was modest sell my house, buy a small RV, and spend a few years exploring the national parks I'd always been too busy to visit. Perhaps after that, a small cottage near the ocean. Nothing extravagant, just peaceful. Stephanie scoffed when I shared this plan. An RV like some retiree cliche, Mom, that's so sad. I tried to explain the appeal of freedom and simplicity, but she couldn't understand why anyone would choose a life that didn't involve luxury resorts and first-class travel. As I approached the final years of my career, I thought Stephanie and I had reached a stable point in our relationship. We weren't as close as I wished, but we spoke weekly and saw each other on major holidays. I accepted that her life with Jackson had changed her, but believed that, deep down, she still valued our relationship. I was wrong. 3 years into their marriage, Stephanie and Jackson decided they wanted to move from their Manhattan apartment to a house in an upscale Connecticut suburb. The apartment is fine for now, but we need to think about our future, Stephanie explained during one of our phone calls. All our friends are moving to Greenwich and Darien. Plus, the city is no place to raise children. Are you pregnant? I asked, heart leaping at the prospect of a grandchild. No, not yet, she said quickly. But we're thinking about starting a family in the next year or two, once we're settled in the right house. For the next several months, house hunting dominated our conversations. Each property they viewed had some fatal flaw: too small, outdated kitchen, insufficient closet space, wrong school district. Their budget was substantial with Jackson's income, but Stephanie's taste exceeded even their means. We found a house today that's absolutely perfect. Stephanie called one evening, her voice bubbling with excitement for the first time in years. 5 bedrooms, a gourmet kitchen, pool, 3-car garage, and the most amazing primary suite. It's in the best neighborhood in Darien. That sounds wonderful, sweetie, I said, genuinely happy to hear her so animated. Are you going to make an offer? Her voice dropped slightly. Well, that's the thing. It's a bit above our budget. Jackson's bonus wasn't quite what we expected this year. The market has been volatile. I knew where the conversation was heading before she even asked. This had been our pattern. Stephanie wants something beyond her means, hints at her disappointment, and I step in to bridge the gap. How much above budget? I asked. The asking price is $2.7 million, she said casually, as though discussing the cost of a dinner out. We can handle the mortgage with Jackson's salary, but the down payment is the issue. We need at least 20% to avoid PMI, and with closing costs, that's about $600,000. My stomach tightened. That's a lot of money, Stephanie. I know, she sighed. But this house is everything we've dreamed of. The market in Darien is so competitive. If we don't act now, we'll be priced out forever. I thought about my retirement savings, the RV dream, the years of careful planning. How much are you short? I heard myself ask. We've saved about $250,000 for the down payment. If we had another $350,000, we could make it work. $350,000, more than the total value of my first house. Let me think about it, I said. That's a significant amount. Mom, please. Her voice took on the pleading tone I could never resist. This is our future. Your grandchildren will grow up in this house. The manipulation was skillful, refined by years of practice. I consulted with my financial advisor the next day. Frank didn't hide his concern. Geraldine, this would significantly impact your retirement plans, he warned. You'd need to work at least 5 more years, maybe longer, and that's assuming the market performs well. I know, I sighed. But it's for Stephanie. For her family. My future grandchildren. Frank had known me for years and understood my blind spot when it came to my daughter. Just make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. And if you do decide to help, I strongly recommend speaking with a lawyer to document this as either a loan or a gift for tax purposes. In the end, I agreed to provide the funds. Stephanie was thrilled when I called to tell her, "Oh my God, Mom, you're the best. This is going to change our lives." For the first time in years, I felt truly valued by my daughter. The house went under contract and the process began. Inspections, appraisals, paperwork. I worked with my financial advisor to liquidate investments and prepare for the transfer of funds. The closing was scheduled for 2 weeks after Stephanie's birthday, which seemed like perfect timing. I decided to make the final funding confirmation my birthday gift to her, along with a beautiful set of crystal champagne flutes for their first toast in the new house. I spent hours selecting a birthday card that expressed my love and hopes for her future. In it, I wrote about my joy in being able to help provide a home where her children, my grandchildren, would grow up. I imagined her tears of gratitude, perhaps even a realization of the depth of my love that had always put her needs above my own. Stephanie invited me to dinner at their apartment the week before her birthday. I assumed it was a pre-birthday celebration and arrived with a small gift, a silk scarf I'd splurged on from her favorite designer. I should have recognized the warning signs the moment I entered their apartment. Jackson barely looked up from his phone to greet me. Stephanie was distracted, checking her watch repeatedly as though counting the minutes until I would leave. Dinner was takeout from an expensive sushi restaurant. The conversation, when it happened at all, focused on their friends' recent purchases and vacations. Madison and Tyler just bought the most amazing vacation home in the Berkshires, Stephanie said while picking at her sashimi. It has its own lake. That sounds lovely, I replied, trying to engage. Perhaps we could all visit there sometime. Jackson snorted quietly. Stephanie gave him a look before turning back to me. I don't think so, Mom. It's kind of just for their close friends. The implication that I wouldn't fit into their social circle hung awkwardly in the air. Trying to shift to more positive territory, I mentioned that I had been finalizing some details for her birthday surprise. Speaking of your birthday next week, I said with a smile, I have something special planned. Stephanie rolled her eyes. Mom, please don't make a big deal about my birthday. I'm not 5 years old anymore. I know, but birthdays are special at any age, I said, my enthusiasm dampening. Just no surprise parties or embarrassing gifts, okay? She continued. Last year, that sweater you gave me was so... not something I would ever wear. The sweater had been cashmere in what I thought was her favorite color. I'd saved for months to afford it. The conversation somehow shifted to my retirement plans, with Jackson suddenly showing interest. So, Geraldine, when exactly are you planning to stop working? He asked, his tone overly casual. I was hoping to retire next year, I said. Though with the housing market as it is, I might wait a bit longer to sell my place. And what exactly are your plans? He pressed. Financially, I mean. The question felt intrusive, but I answered honestly. Well, after helping with your house down payment, I'll still have enough for a comfortable but modest retirement. I've always wanted to buy a small RV and visit the national parks. Stephanie made a disgusted noise. Again with the RV, Mom, that's so tacky. I think it sounds fun, I defended. Seeing the country at my own pace, meeting new people. Meeting new people. Stephanie's voice dripped with disdain. Like what, some old widower in a polyester shirt at a campground in Nebraska? Jackson laughed and they exchanged a look that excluded me entirely. I just think, Stephanie continued, That someone with your financial knowledge should have more sophisticated retirement plans. It's almost embarrassing. The criticism stung, but I tried again to redirect the conversation. Well, everyone has different dreams. Speaking of dreams coming true, I can't wait to see your faces when you get your birthday surprise next week. Stephanie put down her chopsticks with an exaggerated sigh. Mom, seriously, I don't want another one of your thoughtful but useless gifts. No offense, but you never really get what I actually want or need. Stephanie, I said quietly, hurt building in my chest. The gift I have planned is something I know you want very much. Unless it's a check with a lot of zeros, I doubt it, she muttered. Jackson chimed in. Or maybe a certain house in Darien. His tone was joking, but his eyes were calculating. Actually. I started ready to hint at the down payment confirmation, hoping to lighten the mood, but Stephanie cut me off. Look, Mom, I know you try, but your gifts are always so practical and boring. Like you're still buying for the daughter you wish I was not the woman I actually am. The conversation was spiraling, moving further from the warm family dinner I had anticipated. I tried one last time. Sweetheart, I think you might be surprised this year. I've put a lot of thought into what would make you truly happy. That's when it happened. Stephanie put down her glass with excessive force, wine sloshing over the rim onto the white tablecloth. You want to know what would make me happy, Mom? What would be the greatest gift you could possibly give me? Her voice was sharp, each word precise and deliberate. Yes, of course, I said, still hoping to salvage the evening. She looked me directly in the eyes. The greatest gift would be if you just died so we could finally get your money and live the life we deserve. The world stopped. Silence filled the room, broken only by the distant sound of traffic below their high-rise apartment. Jackson didn't look shocked or embarrassed by his wife's statement. If anything, the slight nod he gave suggested agreement. Stephanie, I whispered, my voice barely functioning. You don't mean that. Don't I? She challenged, leaning forward. Let's be honest for once. You've held on to your money like it's some prize to dangle over my head. If you're good, if you visit enough, if you pretend to care about my boring life, maybe you'll get some when I'm gone. Well, I'm tired of waiting and playing this game. That's never been... Save it, she interrupted. We all know you're only helping with the house because it makes you feel important, not because you actually care about my happiness. If you did, you'd have given me my inheritance years ago instead of making me jump through hoops. Inheritance. The word echoed in my mind. My child was sitting across from me discussing my death as a financial transaction, an inconvenient delay in her access to money that she already considered hers. I stood up, legs unsteady, and gathered my purse. I should go. Neither of them protested. Neither apologized. Stephanie simply shrugged as if relieved the pretense was over. The truth hurts, doesn't it? She said as I walked to the door. It did hurt. More than she could possibly understand. The physical pain in my chest was so intense I momentarily wondered if I was having a heart attack. The elevator ride to the lobby was a blur. Somehow I made it to my car, tears streaming down my face as I navigated the evening traffic. Every red light was a new wave of sobs that racked my body. By the time I reached home, I felt hollow, scraped empty of everything except pain. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my daughter's words replaying on an endless loop. The greatest gift would be if you just died. I said, how had we arrived here? Where had I gone wrong? Sleep eluded me completely that night, as the first hints of dawn colored my bedroom ceiling. I remained motionless in bed, physically and emotionally exhausted, yet unable to find rest. My mind cycled through 30 years of memories, searching for the moment when my beloved daughter transformed into someone who could wish for my death. When Stephanie was 7, she made me a Mother's Day card with a stick figure drawing of us holding hands. I love you more than unicorns, she had written in her wobbly handwriting. It had been pinned to my bulletin board until it faded from sunlight. When she was 12, I caught the flu and couldn't get out of bed for days. She brought me soup and read aloud from my favorite mystery novel, checking my temperature every hour with intense concentration. When she was 16, we took a road trip to visit colleges, singing along to 90s pop songs and stopping at quirky roadside attractions. We laughed until we cried at a gas station when I accidentally sprayed myself with the windshield cleaner. Where was that girl now? Had she ever really existed, or had I been seeing only what I wanted to see? As morning light filled the room, I forced myself to get up and go through the motions of my daily routine. Shower, coffee, toast that I couldn't eat. The physical world seemed distant, as if I were moving underwater. I called in sick to work for the first time in years. My assistant Joyce sounded concerned. "Geraldine, you never take sick days. Are you all right?" "Just not feeling well." I managed my voice rough from crying. "I'll be back tomorrow." But even as I said it, I knew something fundamental had changed. The life I had been living, the future I had planned, suddenly required reassessment. I spent the morning sitting at my kitchen table, surrounded by photo albums and financial documents. The visual juxtaposition was striking: images of Stephanie growing up alongside records of money transferred accounts, depleted, sacrifices made. College tuition, $120,000. Study abroad program, $30,000. Wedding contribution, $45,000. First apartment security deposit and furniture, $20,000. Countless smaller transfers over the years for vacations, emergencies, and luxuries. And now the planned house down payment, $350,000. Money that would never fund my RV dreams, my modest cottage by the sea, my worry-free retirement years. The financial reality was clear and brutal. I had compromised my own security repeatedly to support Stephanie's increasingly luxurious lifestyle, all while she apparently resented me for not giving more. Around noon, my phone rang. It was Marianne, my oldest friend, who had stood by me through David's death and the challenges of single motherhood. "You didn't show up for our coffee date," she said when I answered. "That's not like you." The concern in her voice cracked my fragile composure, and I found myself telling her everything through renewed tears. "Oh, Jerry," she said when I finished recounting Stephanie's cruel words, "I'm coming over right now." Marianne arrived with lunch I couldn't eat and the straightforward wisdom that had guided me through previous crises. "I need to ask you something difficult," she said as we sat in my living room. "And I need you to really think before you answer. Has Stephanie always been this way, or have you been making excuses for her behavior for years?" The question felt like a physical blow, but I forced myself to consider it honestly. Incidents I had dismissed as youthful selfishness, moments of rudeness I had attributed to stress or external influence, patterns of manipulation I had willfully ignored, all suddenly aligned into a clear picture. "I've enabled this," I whispered. "I've taught her that my only value is financial." Marianne nodded gently. "And what are you going to do about it now?" The question hung between us, demanding an answer that would define the rest of my life. "I don't know," I admitted. "The money for the house? It's already been arranged. The closing is in 3 weeks. Is that what you want?" After what she said to you, did I want to reward the most hurtful statement anyone had ever said to me with a gift of $350,000? Did I want to continue pouring my resources and love into someone who saw me only as a financial support system, an obstacle to their inheritance? "No," I said, finally, the word surprisingly liberating. "No, that's not what I want." "Then what do you want, Jerry? Forget about Stephanie for a minute. What do you want for yourself?" The question was so foreign, it took me several moments to formulate an answer. For decades, my wants had been secondary, considered only after Stephanie's needs and desires had been addressed. "I want peace," I said slowly. "I want to travel while I'm still healthy enough to enjoy it. I want to be around people who value me for who I am, not what I can give them. I want the years I have left to be mine." Saying the words aloud felt both terrifying and exhilarating. Marianne squeezed my hand. "Then that's what you should have." After Marianne left, I sat at my desk and began making lists. Practical steps, financial adjustments, legal considerations. The analytical skills that had served me well in my career now provided structure to my emotional chaos. List in hand, I called Frank, my financial advisor. "I need to cancel the house down payment transfer," I said when he answered, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "The Connecticut property, may I ask why?" Frank had been managing my finances for 15 years and knew better than most how important Stephanie was to me. I briefly explained the situation, sparing some of the most painful details. I see, he said, his tone neutral but kind. I'll start the process immediately. And Geraldine, if I may speak frankly, please do. From a purely financial perspective, this is the right decision. That withdrawal would have significantly compromised your retirement security. Thank you, Frank. The validation, even on purely fiscal grounds, strengthened my resolve. Next, I called Patricia Warren, my attorney. I need to update my will and estate plans. How soon can I come in? I have time tomorrow morning at 9, she said. Is everything all right? No, I admitted, but it will be. That evening, as the sun set, I stood in my backyard watching the light change. For the first time since Stephanie's shocking statement, I felt something other than pain. Not happiness, certainly, but perhaps the beginning of acceptance. A strange, quiet determination. I would grieve the relationship I thought I had with my daughter. I would acknowledge the mistakes I had made in raising her with insufficient boundaries and excessive indulgence. But I would not continue to participate in my own emotional and financial exploitation. As darkness fell, I made one final decision. I would not just cancel the house funding. I would reclaim my life entirely. New beginning, new purpose, without the weight of toxic expectations and ungrateful demands. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in years, dreamless and deep. With the morning came clarity and purpose I hadn't felt in decades. I dressed carefully for my appointment with Patricia, choosing a suit that projected confidence rather than the softer maternal style I typically wore around Stephanie. Patricia's office was in a converted Victorian home downtown. Her practice focused on estate planning and elder law. We had a long-standing professional relationship, but today's meeting would venture into more personal territory. So, Patricia said once we were settled in her wood-paneled office, you mentioned wanting to make changes to your will and estate plans. What specifically did you have in mind? I want to remove Stephanie as my primary beneficiary. I stated the words, still difficult to say aloud. And I need advice on canceling a significant financial gift I had planned to give her. Patricia's expression remained professionally neutral, but her eyes reflected concern. That's a significant change, Geraldine. May I ask what prompted this decision? I gave her a condensed version of recent events, ending with Stephanie's cruel statement about my death being her preferred gift. Patricia listened without interruption, taking occasional notes. I understand, she said when I finished. From a legal perspective, there's nothing complicated about changing your will. You're of sound mind and beneficiary designations are entirely at your discretion. The house funding situation, however, might be more complex. What stage is that transaction in? The money hasn't been transferred yet, I explained. But Stephanie and her husband have signed preliminary paperwork with the mortgage company based on my verbal commitment to provide the down payment. Patricia tapped her pen thoughtfully against her notepad. Without seeing the specific documents, I can't give you definitive advice. However, verbal commitments generally don't create legal obligations in these situations. Still, we should draft a formal letter to the mortgage company documenting your withdrawal of financial support. For the next hour, we restructured my estate plan. Rather than leaving everything to Stephanie, I designated several charities as my primary beneficiaries, organizations supporting single mothers and educational opportunities for women. I do want to provide something for Stephanie, I said, surprising myself with the lingering maternal instinct. Perhaps a small trust with specific conditions. What conditions did you have in mind? Patricia asked. The funds should only be accessible for genuine needs, medical emergencies, education for her children, basic living expenses if she ever faces true hardship, not for luxury homes or vacations. Patricia nodded approvingly. We can structure a trust with an independent trustee who evaluates disbursement requests against specific criteria. That would prevent the funds from being used frivolously while still providing a safety net. As she drafted the new documents, I felt a weight lifting. For years, I had worried about Stephanie's financial future, seeing my estate as her ultimate security. Now I recognized that continuing to enable her materialistic lifestyle wouldn't truly help her, and it was destroying me. After signing the new will and trust documents, Patricia handed me a formal letter withdrawing my financial commitment to the house purchase. I recommend having this delivered to the mortgage company directly with copies to Stephanie and her husband. Would you like my office to handle that? I hesitated only briefly. Yes, please, but wait until the day after her birthday to deliver it. There's something I need to do first. Patricia raised an eyebrow but didn't question my timing. As I left her office, she offered a final observation that stayed with me. In my 30 years practicing elder law, I've seen many parents struggle with adult children who view them as financial resources rather than human beings. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, Geraldine. Sometimes it's the most loving thing you can do for both of you. My next stop was the bank where I closed the joint account I had maintained with Stephanie since her college years, the account I had faithfully deposited funds into whenever she mentioned being a little short this month. Would you like to transfer the balance to your personal account? The bank manager asked. No, I decided in that moment. Please issue a cashier's check. The modest amount remaining would be my final gift to her, no strings attached, no expectations. From the bank, I drove to my office. I hadn't planned to go in, but suddenly facing my colleagues seemed important, a small act of normalcy amid the upheaval. Joyce looked up in surprise when I entered. Geraldine feeling better. Much better, thank you, I replied, realizing it wasn't entirely a lie. The pain hadn't disappeared, but it had transformed into something manageable, purposeful. I spent several hours catching up on work and then called a meeting with my two junior partners. For years, I had been gradually transferring clients to them in preparation for an eventual retirement, but always with hesitation, always keeping one foot firmly in the business I had built. I've decided to accelerate my retirement timeline, I announced. I'd like to complete the client transition within the next 3 months. Their surprise quickly gave way to enthusiastic planning. By the time I left the office that evening, the framework for my professional exit was in place. Another piece of my new future falling into position. At home, I began the process of researching travel options. Not the bargain RV I had originally planned, but something more substantial, a comfortable motorhome that would serve as my mobile home for the coming year. I found myself on a dealership website looking at a 30-foot model with all the amenities I would need: reliable engine, good gas mileage, comfortable living quarters, and excellent safety features. This could work, I murmured, clicking through the photos. For the first time, my travel dreams felt immediate and concrete, rather than a distant possibility after Stephanie's needs were met. I scheduled an appointment to view the RV the following day, then turned my attention to researching routes and national parks. The atlas of national parks I'd received as a Christmas gift years ago and never had time to fully explore became my evening companion. As I marked potential destinations on a map of the United States, I realized I was smiling. Not the forced smile I had worn through years of Stephanie's subtle and not-so-subtle put-downs, but a genuine expression of hope. My phone rang several times that evening, Stephanie's name flashing on the screen. I silenced each call, not yet ready for that conversation. She left voicemails that grew increasingly irritated. Mom, why aren't you picking up? Call me back. It's important. It's about the house. Mom, the mortgage broker needs to confirm some details about your contribution. Call me ASAP. Seriously, Mom. Are you ignoring me now? That's really mature. Call me back or I'm coming over tomorrow. The final message, left shortly before midnight, contained the first hint of concern rather than annoyance. Mom, are you okay? I'm getting worried. Please call me when you get this. I turned off my phone and went to bed emotionally exhausted but oddly at peace. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and painful confrontations, but tonight I would rest in the knowledge that I was finally choosing myself. The next morning dawned clear and bright. I woke early, made coffee, and sat on my back porch watching the neighborhood come to life. The simple pleasure of birds at the feeder and the soft morning light felt amplified, as if I were experiencing it for the first time. My phone, when I turned it back on, showed 7 missed calls from Stephanie and 3 from Jackson. I ignored them all and instead called James Harlow, a realtor I'd helped purchase his first investment property years ago. Geraldine, he answered warmly. How are you? It's been too long. I'm well, James. I'm calling because I've decided to sell my house and I'd like you to handle the listing. That's wonderful news. Ready for that retirement you've been talking about for years? More than ready, I confirmed. How soon can you come by to discuss details? James arrived that afternoon, clipboard in hand, professional but friendly. We walked through the house I'd lived in for 25 years, the home where I'd raised Stephanie, the place I'd both loved and sometimes felt trapped by. The market's strong right now, James noted as we finished the tour. With your location and the condition of the property, we should be able to move quickly. Are you thinking of buying another place locally? No, I said, surprising myself with how decisive I sounded. I'm buying an RV and traveling for a while. After that, who knows? Maybe a small place on the coast. Sounds like an adventure. James smiled. When would you like to list? As soon as possible. I'd like to be on the road within 2 months. James looked surprised but quickly recovered. We can make that happen. Let's talk numbers. We settled on an asking price that would ensure a quick sale while still providing me with a healthy return on my long-term investment. After James left, I began the daunting task of sorting through 25 years of accumulated possessions. I started with the easiest spaces, the guest room, the hall closets, before working up the courage to face the room that had been Stephanie's. Though she hadn't lived at home for years, I had preserved her room largely as she'd left it for college. Trophies still lined the bookshelf, photographs covered the bulletin board, and her prom dress still hung in the closet wrapped in plastic. Standing in the doorway, I realized how this shrine to Stephanie's childhood epitomized my unhealthy prioritization of her above all else, even my own space in my own home. Time to let go, I whispered, retrieving empty boxes from the garage. I worked methodically, sorting items into categories: things to keep for sentimental value, things to donate, things to discard, and things to give to Stephanie if she wanted them. The keep pile was remarkably small when I finished a few photographs, the Mother's Day cards from her early years, a clay handprint from kindergarten. The physical remnants of our relationship fit into a single shoebox. The rest I packed for donation or for Stephanie to collect. The prom dress, the trophies, the stuffed animals, all the artifacts of a childhood that had evolved into an adulthood I barely recognized. By evening, the room was transformed. No longer a shrine to the past, but simply a space ready to be photographed for the real estate listing, ready for new owners to reimagine. I ordered takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and ate on the patio, savoring flavors I usually rushed through. The sunset seemed particularly vibrant, or perhaps I was simply present enough to notice. As twilight deepened, I began writing the letter I would leave for Stephanie. Finding the right words proved challenging. I wanted to explain my decision without bitterness, but also without sugarcoating the harm she had caused. After several drafts, I settled on direct honesty. Dear Stephanie, by the time you read this, you'll likely have received notice that I will not be providing the house down payment as previously discussed. I'm sure this comes as a shock, and for that, I am sorry. What you said at dinner, that the greatest gift I could give you would be to die so you could access my money, forced me to reevaluate our relationship. Those words revealed how you truly see me not as a mother to love, but as a financial resource to exploit. I've included bank statements documenting the financial support I've provided over the years. Not because I expect repayment or gratitude, but because I want you to understand that I have always given you everything I could, often at great personal sacrifice. I've also included a small cashier's check. This is the final financial assistance I will provide. My will has been updated to remove you as primary beneficiary, though I've established a modest trust that can help in genuine emergencies. This decision isn't about punishment. It's about recognizing that continuing to fund your lifestyle while you resent me for not giving more is unhealthy for both of us. It has prevented you from developing financial independence and me from living authentically. I'm selling the house and pursuing the retirement dreams I've postponed for years. I'll be traveling and I won't be reachable for some time. I need space to heal and rediscover who I am beyond being your mother. If someday you wish to rebuild our relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial expectation, that door remains cautiously open. But it will require acknowledgement of the hurt caused and genuine change on both our parts. I will always love the daughter I raised, even as I struggle to understand the woman she has become. Mom. Reading over the letter, I felt it captured my truth without descending into anger or martyrdom. I sealed it in an envelope along with the bank statements and cashier's check. As a final touch, I added the photo album I had originally planned as part of her birthday gift, not the glossy professional photos of her wedding. or the carefully curated social media moments, but the real story of her life: first steps, school plays, camping trips, the ordinary magic of childhood that money could never buy. The doorbell rang shortly after I finished, startling me. Through the peephole, I saw Stephanie standing on my front porch, arms crossed, foot tapping impatiently. I took a deep breath and opened the door. "Finally!" she exclaimed, pushing past me into the foyer. "I've been calling you for 2 days. Why haven't you answered?" "Hello, Stephanie," I said quietly, closing the door behind her. She turned to face me, irritation clear on her face. "The mortgage broker has been trying to confirm your financial contribution. They need documentation from you directly. Why aren't you responding to their emails?" I studied my daughter's face, the familiar features that still held echoes of the child I had loved so fiercely. In her expression, I saw no concern for my well-being, no regret for her cruel words, only annoyance at a logistical inconvenience. "I've been busy making some important decisions," I said. "What decisions? What are you talking about?" She glanced around, noticing the boxes stacked in the living room. "Are you cleaning out closets or something?" "I'm selling the house." The statement hung between us, simple but seismic. "Selling the—" She stared at me, confusion replacing irritation. "Why would you sell? Where would you live?" "I'm buying an RV. I'm going to travel for a while, see the national parks, the coast, all the places I've wanted to visit." Stephanie's laugh was sharp and dismissive. "An RV, Mom, be serious. What about the house down payment? The closing is in 2 weeks." "There won't be a house down payment," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "I've decided to use that money for my retirement instead." Her face flushed dark red. "What?" "You can't do that. We've already signed paperwork. The sellers accepted our offer based on your commitment. My verbal commitment, which I'm now formally withdrawing. The mortgage company will receive official notification tomorrow." "This is insane." Stephanie's voice rose to a shout. "You can't just change your mind. We're counting on that money." "The same way I was counting on having a daughter who valued me for more than my bank account," I asked quietly. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "Is this about what I said at dinner, Mom? I was upset. I didn't mean it literally." "But you meant the sentiment behind it," I replied. "That I'm worth more to you dead than alive. That my purpose is to fund your lifestyle, not to be loved for who I am." "You're twisting my words," she protested, but her eyes slid away from mine, unable to maintain contact. "Am I? Then tell me, Stephanie, when was the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for money, not to complain about something, but simply because you wanted to share your life with me?" Her silence was answer enough. "I've prepared this for you," I said, handing her the envelope with the letter, statements, and check. "It explains my decision more fully." She took the envelope automatically but made no move to open it. "You can't be serious. After everything I've done for you?" The question was so breathtaking in its reversal of reality that I nearly laughed. "What exactly have you done for me, Stephanie?" I've included you in my life. I've invited you to holidays and events. I've listened to your boring stories about work and your friends. I've pretended to be interested in your pathetic retirement plans." Each word confirmed that I was making the right decision. "I think you should go now," I said calmly. "The letter explains everything else you need to know." "This isn't over," she warned, clutching the envelope tightly. "You can't just cut me off like this." "I'm not cutting you off, Stephanie. I'm simply choosing to prioritize my own well-being after decades of prioritizing yours. There's a difference." "Jackson's father is an attorney," she threatened, backing toward the door. "You'll be hearing from him." "I've already consulted with my own attorney," I replied. "I've made no legally binding commitments regarding the house. But if Jackson's father wishes to discuss it, Patricia Warren's contact information is in the letter." Stephanie stood in the doorway, searching for a parting shot that would wound me or change my mind. Finding none, she turned and stormed to her car. I watched her drive away, expecting to feel devastated. Instead, I felt oddly peaceful. The confrontation I had feared was over, and I had remained true to my decision. Back inside, I continued packing, preparing for the life that awaited beyond the horizon. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. James listed my house, and within days we had multiple offers above asking price. I accepted one with a 45-day closing timeline, giving me enough time to finalize my travel plans and settle my affairs. Stephanie called repeatedly after our confrontation, her messages cycling through anger manipulation and occasional genuine-sounding remorse. I listened to each one but didn't respond. The time wasn't right yet, the wounds too fresh, the patterns too ingrained. Jackson's father did indeed contact Patricia, making vague threats about promissory estoppel and detrimental reliance. Patricia handled it with professional grace, explaining that no legally binding commitment had been made and suggesting that further harassment might result in a restraining order. The calls stopped after that. The RV I had admired online proved even better in person. After a thorough inspection and test drive, I signed the purchase agreement feeling a thrill of excitement rather than the guilt that had accompanied major purchases in the past. "When do you think you'll head out?" asked the salesman as he processed my paperwork. "As soon as my house closes," I replied. "I'm thinking of starting with the Southwest. Always wanted to see the Grand Canyon." "You'll love it," he assured me. "My wife and I did a similar trip after our kids left for college. Best decision we ever made." With the house sale proceeding and the RV purchased, I turned my attention to sorting through the remainder of my possessions. Most furniture would be sold with the house or donated. Clothes I hadn't worn in years went to a women's shelter, along with household items I wouldn't need in my more compact living situation. Each item I released felt like shedding another ounce of the weight I had carried for decades. The accumulated possessions that had once seemed necessary, but now represented only anchors to a past I was leaving behind. Joyce and my colleagues at the financial firm organized a retirement party. Standing among people who genuinely valued my professional contributions and personal friendship reinforced that I had worth beyond my role as Stephanie's mother and financial safety net. "We've set up a group text to follow your adventures," Joyce told me, presenting a gift from the team, a high-end digital camera. "We expect regular updates and lots of photos." "I promise," I said, deeply touched by their thoughtfulness. I spent an evening with Marianne, who had been my rock throughout the process. We sat on her deck with glasses of wine watching the sunset. "I'm proud of you, Jerry," she said. "Not many people have the courage to completely reinvent their lives at our age." "I'm not sure it was courage so much as necessity," I admitted. "I couldn't continue as I was." "That recognition itself takes courage," she insisted. "So many people stay trapped in unhealthy patterns because change feels too frightening." "Are you sure you won't join me for part of the trip?" I asked, not for the first time. "There's plenty of room in the RV." Marianne smiled. "Maybe for a week or two down the road. But this journey is yours, Jerry. You need to make it alone, at least at the beginning." She was right, as she so often was. This wasn't just a physical journey, but a psychological one, learning who Geraldine was, apart from her roles as mother, provider, and professional. 3 days before closing on my house, I received a text from Stephanie that differed from her previous messages. "Mom, can we please talk face to face? I'm trying to understand." I considered ignoring it as I had the others, but something in the simple request, free from manipulation or anger, prompted me to respond, "Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the cafe on Main Street." Her reply came instantly, "I'll be there. Thank you." That night, I prepared mentally for what might be our last conversation for a long time. I set clear boundaries in my mind and rehearsed responses to the tactics I anticipated: guilt, anger manipulation, or false remorse. I was determined to remain compassionate but firm in my decision. The cafe was relatively quiet when I arrived the next morning. I chose a table in the corner, ordered a cappuccino, and waited. Stephanie arrived precisely at 10, looking uncharacteristically subdued in jeans and a simple sweater, rather than her usual designer ensemble. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, sliding into the chair across from mine. "You're welcome," I replied, maintaining a neutral tone. She ordered coffee and for several minutes seemed unable to initiate the conversation she had requested. Finally, she spoke. "The house deal fell through." I assumed it would. "We had to forfeit the earnest money, $10,000. I nodded but offered no sympathy. That consequence was minimal compared to the $350,000 they had expected me to provide. "Jackson's furious," she continued. He blames me for relying on your contribution. And what do you think? I asked. She stared into her coffee cup. I think I've been terrible to you, and I didn't even realize it until you stopped answering my calls. The admission surprised me, though I remained cautious. Your letter, she continued, and the bank statements. I never knew how much you'd given up for me. I mean, I knew you helped with college and other things, but seeing it all listed out like that, it wasn't about the money, Stephanie. It was never about the money. I know that now, she said quietly. It was about respect, about seeing you as a person, not just my mom with resources. The insight seemed genuine, but I had been fooled before by temporary remorse that reverted to entitlement once the crisis passed. What do you want from this conversation? I asked directly. She looked up, eyes glistening with tears. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if it can be fixed. But I didn't want you to leave without telling you that I'm sorry, really sorry. What I said about wishing you would die, it was cruel and untrue and unforgivable. Thank you for that, I said, feeling my resolve soften slightly without breaking. Apology accepted. Hope flickered across her face. Does that mean you'll reconsider about the house, about your will? And there it was, the true purpose beneath the apology. I felt a familiar disappointment, but also a new strength. No, Stephanie. My financial decisions stand. I accept your apology, but rebuilding trust would take time and consistent change, not a single conversation. Her face fell. I understand. I guess I deserve that. It's not about what you deserve, I explained gently. It's about what's healthy for both of us. You need to build your own life without relying on my resources, and I need to live my remaining years with joy and purpose. Where will you go? She asked, seeming genuinely interested for the first time. Southwest first, the Grand Canyon, Zion, Bryce. Then up the Pacific coast. After that, who knows? Will you let me know you're safe? Send a postcard or something. I studied her face, seeing glimpses of vulnerability rarely displayed in recent years. Yes, I can do that. And maybe someday, when you're ready, we could talk again. Try to build something different. Maybe, I conceded. But it would have to be very different, Stephanie, based on mutual respect, not financial expectation. She nodded, wiping away a tear. I should go. Jackson's waiting to hear how this went. What will you tell him? A hint of her old self-assurance returned. That my mother is stronger than either of us realized, and that we need to figure out our lives without expecting her to fund them. It wasn't a complete transformation, but it was something, a recognition, however small, of the change that needed to occur. We parted with an awkward hug, neither fully embracing nor completely distant. As I watched her walk away, I felt a complex mixture of sadness for what had been lost and hope for what might eventually, with time and effort, be rebuilt. But that was a concern for another day. Right now, the open road awaited, and for the first time in decades, my path was determined solely by my own desires. 2 days later, I handed over the keys to my house, signed the final paperwork, and drove away in my new RV, my home for the foreseeable future. The financial security from the house sale, combined with my retirement savings, no longer depleted by Stephanie's needs, would support me comfortably for years to come. As I merged onto the interstate heading west, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced since before Stephanie was born. Not because I loved her less, but because I had finally learned to love myself enough. The greatest gift, it turned out, wasn't dying as Stephanie had cruelly suggested. It was living fully, authentically, and on my own terms. 6 months into my journey, I found myself parked on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean near Big Sur. The view was breathtaking. Azure waves crashing against rugged rocks, seabirds soaring on thermal currents, and the endless horizon where sky met water in a seamless blend of blues. My RV, which I had named Freedom, had become more home to me than my house ever was. I had personalized it with small touches, wildflower photographs I had taken at various national parks, a hand-woven blanket purchased from a Navajo artist near Monument Valley, and a collection of stones gathered from significant stops along my journey. Living with fewer possessions had proven liberating. rather than limiting. Each item I kept served a purpose or brought genuine joy free from the weight of obligation or memory that had cluttered my previous life. The morning ritual I had developed involved coffee on the small folding deck chair outside my RV, a journal entry capturing the previous day's experiences, and a moment of gratitude for the peace I had found. Today's entry described the elephant seals I had watched for hours the day before, their ungainly movements on land contrasting with their grace in water, their prehistoric calls echoing along the shoreline. Simple observations, but recorded with a mindfulness I had rarely achieved in my former busy life. As I closed my journal, my phone signaled an incoming email. I had limited my connectivity, intentionally checking messages only every few days, but maintained contact with key people: Marianne, my former colleagues, my financial advisor, and Patricia, my attorney. The email was from Patricia, our monthly scheduled update. I opened it, sipping the last of my coffee. Geraldine, I hope this finds you well and enjoying your travels. Your last postcard from Yellowstone made me add it to my own bucket list. As promised, here is your monthly update regarding Stephanie. There have been some developments I thought you should know about. 1. She has begun attending financial counseling sessions according to the receipts she submitted to me. The counselor specializes in breaking unhealthy money patterns and developing financial independence. 2. She and Jackson have downsized significantly, selling many luxury items and moving from their apartment to a much more modest condo they can actually afford. 3. She has started working again, taking a position at a nonprofit that supports literacy programs in underfunded schools. The salary is modest, but she expressed in her letter to me that the work feels meaningful. I've attached her most recent letter to you. As always, you are under no obligation to read it or respond. Your boundaries remain paramount. All legal matters remain settled and secure. Your trust is performing well, and all paperwork regarding your estate plans is in order. Safe travels, Patricia. I set the phone down and gazed at the ocean, processing this information before deciding whether to open Stephanie's letter. Her previous communications had evolved over time, from angry demands to tearful pleas to tentative acceptance. This would be the 7th letter she had sent through Patricia, maintaining the boundary I had established of no direct contact until I was ready. After several minutes of reflection, I opened the attachment. Dear Mom, I hope you're well and finding joy in your travels. The postcard you sent from the Grand Canyon is on my refrigerator. The vastness you described sounds both terrifying and wonderful, kind of like the changes I've been trying to make in myself. My financial counselor, Dr. Martin, has been helping me understand my unhealthy relationship with money and possessions. He says I've been trying to fill an emotional void with material things, which probably isn't news to you. What might surprise you is that I'm finally listening. Jackson and I have been struggling. The lifestyle change has been harder for him than for me. He doesn't understand why I suddenly care about budgeting and living within our means. We're in couples counseling, but I don't know if our marriage will survive this shift. Strangely, I'm okay with that possibility. I'm discovering I have strength I never knew existed. My job at Literacy Partners isn't what I ever imagined doing, but watching a child read their first sentence provides a satisfaction that no designer purchase ever did. The irony isn't lost on me. You spent your life trying to teach me the value of meaningful work and contribution, lessons I rejected until now. I think often about what you said that day at the cafe, that rebuilding our relationship would require consistent change, not just words. I'm trying to make those changes not just to reconnect with you, though, I hope that happens, but because I finally see how empty my previous values were. Dr. Martin suggested I write down 3 things I'm grateful for each day. You're often on that list, not for what you gave me materially, but for having the courage to stop enabling behaviors that were destroying both of us. It was the hardest gift anyone has ever given me, but possibly the most important. Wherever you are, I hope you're finding the peace and purpose you deserve. If someday you're willing to let me be part of your life again, I'll be here not as the entitled daughter I was, but as someone striving to be worthy of your remarkable strength. With love and profound respect, Stephanie. I read the letter twice, tears blurring my vision. The words seemed to come from a different person than the woman who had wished for my death to access my money. Was it genuine transformation or another manipulation tactic? Only time would tell. What I did know was that my decision 6 months ago had created ripples of change for both of us. By refusing to continue our unhealthy dynamic, I had forced Stephanie to confront realities she had long avoided. And I had discovered capacities within myself I might never have found otherwise. Over the past months, I had hiked trails I once thought beyond my abilities, made friends from all walks of life at campgrounds and visitor centers, learned basic RV maintenance skills from fellow travelers, and even tried paragliding off the cliffs of San Diego, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. Each new experience had built my confidence. Each challenge overcome had reinforced that I was more than just Stephanie's mother or a financial provider. I was Geraldine, adventurous, resilient, capable, and worthy of respect, especially self-respect. I tucked my phone away without responding to the letter. Not from anger or resentment, but because I wasn't ready yet to re-engage. My healing journey needed more time, more miles, more sunrises and new places. Perhaps someday we would rebuild a relationship on healthier terms. Perhaps not. What mattered was that both of us were growing in our separate journeys. I packed up my coffee mug and journal, ready to head north up the Pacific Coast Highway. Today, I would drive only as far as I wanted, stop when something caught my interest, eat when I was hungry, sleep when I was tired. Simple freedoms that had once seemed impossible luxuries. As I started the RV's engine, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back had clear eyes and laugh lines, silver hair, and sun-kissed skin. She looked content in a way the Geraldine of a year ago never had. What had Stephanie said that the greatest gift would be if I just died? In a way, that's exactly what happened. The woman I had been defined by sacrifice, enabling, and martyrdom had died. In her place stood someone stronger, wiser, and infinitely more alive. That was the truest gift of all, not just to myself, but ultimately to Stephanie as well. Because sometimes loving someone means having the courage to walk away and let them face the consequences of their own choices. And sometimes, saving yourself is the only way to show others how to save themselves. As the RV pulled onto the coastal highway, I smiled at the ocean stretching endlessly beside me. The road ahead curved around the cliffs, revealing new vistas with each turn, just like life itself. Have you ever had to make the difficult decision to walk away from someone you love for your own well-being, or had someone set boundaries with you that ultimately helped you grow? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it. Remember, it's never too late to reclaim your joy and write a new chapter in your story. Thank you for listening, and until next time, be kind to others, but most importantly, be kind to yourself.